back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining me today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Brad.
How's it going?
And we're talking about Safety Day. So this week is our annual Safety Day. Not that we only do safety once a year. I promise, OSHA, if you're listening, we do this many times a year. Every day it's important and priority.
Yeah.
But annually, we pause everything we're doing, get everybody in the same place, and do some trainings and things that, like, you just have to be
just
more hands-on with. Yeah. There's a lot of things you can do in small groups. There's a lot of things you can do with toolbox type training and reinforcement, but some things you just have to do in person and get people engaged. And, like for this one, we bring in some folks from outside the organization to help supplement and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It sounds weird, right? Like as we say it, oh, it's Safety Day. Like, what are you doing? Going over safety. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like on the surface, it's the last thing. Like, Ford or I or Stetson or you or Brad would want to do. Like, get everybody together and talk safety. Like, it doesn't sound fun, right? But it's something we need to do, because if you can't just let it say, well, yes, of course we know to be safe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and complacency is one of the things we'll deal with. But that's sort of the issue. That's the problem with safety, is just being safe doesn't promote safety. Doesn't make you safe. Being safe does not make you safe. So you have to do these sort of trainings where you say, where you reiterate what safety is. Like, what are our expectations? Because there could be little things people don't know, or somebody new to the company, or somebody, a different thing that we do. And so you have to do these things and cover them. And it can be repetitive to some degree, but it makes you stop and think. You know what I mean? Stop and think about the thing you're doing and what the real risk is or isn't. And that's the part that's hard. We work in a difficult industry, in an industry that is statistically unsafe. And I don't mean you're being unsafe. I mean, like, if you just lived in a bubble, that'd be completely safe. Sure. Nothing go wrong.
Well, it's higher risk, right? I mean, anytime you're doing the types of things that we do, there's more risk involved than sitting at a desk, right? Or some of the things that other industries might deal with on a regular basis. Right. So,
depending on what you eat while sitting at your desk.
That's fair. I mean, your personal
food choices.
Personal food choices are definitely putting.
Is my desk near a pizza place?
Something at risk. Yeah.
But on a serious note, they're more risky. There's some risk to exposure, and we need to address that and talk about it as a team and cover some simple topics. Our trainings are never like something overly complicated. It's the basics. It's excavation. It's trenching. It's site work. It's soil conditions. It's trench boxes. It's all those things that we would want to just make sure that we run into every single day.
Yeah. When you say they're basic, I mean they are, but only to the extent that we have that experience with them, right? So like our comfort level, which sometimes is the problem with the things that we do all the time, kind of becomes the complacency component to not always anticipating a risk or not understanding a safety environment.
Yeah. Well, and the we have to manage our own internal desire to get things done. Like, in other words, as a company, it's one of our identifiers. Like, we like to get things done. We like to be active, to finish, to find interesting things, And personally, I found this over the last couple of weeks. I was doing some work down the shore, and just by myself, and I started doing it, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to, as easily as I had hoped it would, and I got frustrated. And I was like, all right, well, there's one clear solution here. I'm going to need a giant sledgehammer. And the giant sledgehammer is going to fix this problem right away. And I took quite a few good swings, and it not only didn't fix the problem. All of a sudden, I realized that I was hearing was concrete flying off of all other things it was hitting. Like I was breaking up pieces, but it was hitting all the other things in the area. And I thought, like, okay, this isn't. At first, I thought this is not productive in me fashion. But then I was like, this is also not safe. Like I didn't actually consider I could get hurt, but I was like, I could break a window. I could get stuck in something. All this concrete could end up in a garden bed, and then Aaron's going to be upset about it. And I was like, all right, we're going to have to come up with a different solution, But too many times at work in our industry, you're trying to get something done. You're trying to get a pipe in the ground. You're trying to get a foundation in. You're trying to get earth moved. And you say like, okay, I do this every day. I'm just going to push the limit a little bit, right? Like I got to get this done. And
Sure.
right there, that's when that's where the exposure, that's where the risk is that you got just one step outside of something you've done 1,000 times. And then 99 of those times it goes fine. But the one time it doesn't, you know what I mean? That's when something happens.
Yeah.
And somebody gets hurt, you know, and that's what we try and address. Because it's really hard to address like the common, just, you know, somebody steps off of a machine and just twists their ankle, you know what I mean, or hurts their knee. Like I mean, you could have been doing everything right and it's just unlucky. But that's, you know, we try and control the accidents we can, which is just making people aware of the risk and aware of where the line is, what the line is between safe and unsafe.
No, for sure. In a lot of ways, Brad, this is like an extension of the safety committee. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. You know, getting out there and showing our people, you know, how important this is. Like the most important thing about, you know, safety day being its own day is the fact that we're willing to shut everything down, right? There's nothing that we're going to go over or talk about that we couldn't have on deck for a rain day or we couldn't do when it's convenient, you know, but to tell the people and our clients, like, hey, like we're shutting everything down, we're bringing everybody in, we're going to be intentional about, you know, talking about this stuff in an environment where nobody has to worry about the other things that go on a daily basis, you know, I think is important, you know, not just fitting safety in when it's convenient. So
yeah, for sure. I agree. And a lot of times when we have those conversations at our safety committee, it's these topics, right? It's like, you know, well, you know, I only had to make one cut with the saw. So I didn't walk all the way back to the truck to grab the shield, right? And it's like, all right, but is that the time when something happens? Yeah. And so just addressing them as a group, talking through the issues. It's not something that, like, you know, if we're being fully transparent, our guys aren't like, you know, super excited.
Oh, they're not
group conversations, right? They're not,
even the free meal is not enough to entice them to be excited about this, right. You know. But then and something we haven't talked about at all on the podcast, right? Is I mean, now it's probably been a month, but Myers had an incident on 30 on the bypass a month ago, and it was the ultimate thing that can happen. You know what I mean? I mean, 2 people died. And they died doing something they do every single day. Like it literally was the start and finish of every day that they worked on that road crew, doing something that is in and of itself very low risk. I'm not going to say there's no risk, right? Because just setting a pattern, there's a risk.
Sure, yeah.
But with no traffic, no risk. You know, and Myers has a thing, and I'm not Myers, but I have, you know, some connections to them, and they have like a green, orange, red thing that, like, there's certain places in their work zone that are a green. Now it's still within the work zone, so it has risk, but the risk is internal to the site itself. And then orange, and I could be messing this up, so if Joe England wants to like call me on it later and shoot me an email, tell me I screwed it up. But orange is like an area of risk, and then red is you're exposed to traffic. You know, so those guys went to work that day, just going to do the same thing they do every day, and they didn't come home. You know, and ultimately, that's what we have to remember when we try and set up these safety days, or when we do a toolbox talk. Is what we're trying to do is avoid the very unlikely, the very low percentage thing happening. And so, yeah, it's not fun, it's not shiny, it's not exciting, but it's worlds better than a funeral.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just something that, and that's why it's hard, because I don't want to make it like it's a necessary evil, like we're going to have to do safety day again. Like, I'd like to flip the narrative to say, like, we're trying to do this, like Brad said, to sort of stop and say, okay, we're going to take a breath. We're not going to do our regular work, and we're going to realize that every day that we get up, we put ourselves at risk. So let's identify some of those risks, talk about them, bring them to the front of your mind, and then you're going to go back to work for another 364 days before we talk about it again in this setting.
Right.
And we're going to bring it up in topics that you hear every single week in Toolbox Talks. There's going to be JSAs where we address. There's going to be all these opportunities to talk about it. But there's something to be said in Brad's point for saying we're going to stop as a company. And we're going to say, like, hey, we need to be safe, and here's how we try to be safe. Because the outcome of not being safe is so dangerous, you know, it's so horrific.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thinking a little bit about like ultimately what's the goal of safety day? You know, we're not a lot of our folks think that most of the things we do in regards to safety are driven by insurance, right? And it's hard to avoid the narrative because, we're usually trying to avoid behaviors that end up being insurance claims. So it's hard to avoid the narrative that we're doing safety related things and it's not because of insurance, right? I think we've been fortunate in so many ways that we've never had like a catastrophic incident. So you just don't want there to have to be that moment to point to it and say, no, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
But to try and like establish that as the goal and to create that narrative and have our folks believe us is sometimes a challenge.
Yeah. Well, so I think the hard part is like if we're I mean, I'm going to say it and we can't undo it, right? Because we're on a podcast. But I mean, sure, at the core of this is two things. One is a financial obligation that you and I have to Berg Construction, that we need to try and make it that we can be both efficient and affordable in our costs. So we need to be able to manage our insurance costs and reduce our risk to be able to produce our work at a profit so that we have a business.
Sure.
But on the other side is a moral obligation that people entrust their lives in us to say that like the vehicle I put them in is safe. The piece of equipment I put them in is safe. The person that I say is okay to operate the track hoe while they're underneath of it trying to set a piece of pipe is competent, right? So we have a moral obligation, and that's where Safety Day comes from, right? In other words, if I was just trying to check boxes, we don't need to do Safety Day. Like you and I could accomplish this through many different ways to just meet the minimum obligation of what the insurance company requires. But we're trying to manage a balance between our moral obligation to provide a truly safe work environment. And that environment is not just the physical environment, but the people, to make sure the people understand. And then we have a fiscal obligation to the company to try and make sure that the costs are manageable, which are done by trying to mitigate risk and accident and rework and all these things that we have to manage every single day. So it's not, the people aren't wrong. There is money at the center of it. There is insurance cost at the center of that. That's all true. But it doesn't change the fact that there's a moral obligation there that we have to make sure we're providing you an environment that you can go home the way you showed up. And, it's really that. That's the balance that we're trying to strike is being honest and saying like, yes, it's about the money, but it's about more than the money. You know what I mean? Like you're playing with your kids at home, on a trampoline, and the kids are having a great time. They're jumping. It's everything else. You don't want your kids to get hurt,
right?
But if you said like, hey, do you want to pay $250 or $500 to go to the emergency room? No, I don't. I would rather spend that money somewhere else. But my real issue is I'd rather my kid not have to go to the emergency room, and
Sure.
And in some ways, work is like a family, you know what I mean? And you and I, and then by default, each person who leads a part of this company has a moral, like parental obligation that like you want to send the people home the way you found them.
Yeah.
I also would like to not to pay the money, but
it can be both things.
But it can be both things, you know what I mean? And if you said like, there's a number of times, and I'll flip it this way. There's a number of times that you and I make decisions. Revive's a good example.
Sure.
Where we say we're just going to spend a little bit more money because we think it's better for the team, and we go through that as we try and manage, especially a different insurance with healthcare. You know what I mean? That's a struggle for us, but we're trying to find ways that even if we have to spend a little more, it can give. It takes care of people a little bit better, and try and do the best we can. And so it's a struggle, but it's not self-serving. It's the basis of everything we do is people go home the way they showed up.
Yeah, for sure. And I would, I 100% agree with what you're saying. And I would think that the obligation versus desire, I think that there is an obligation, but I think beyond that, there's a desire, right? And so I would say, that's the hope or the expectation is that, our desire is folks do things in a safe manner. So we don't have to worry about these situations. I guess you can't take the worry away, but we don't have to have the fruition. We don't have to have the actual occurrence of something that you can't take back ever. And I guess the desire along with that is that the folks that we put in charge in the field and to lead and be stewards of the resources, including the equipment and the human resources that they're provided, is to have the same desire, right? Yeah. And I think that things like this, things like Safety Day, are the goal is, in part to affirm that, like to say, like, this is what we're trying to do, and we need for you to buy in.
Yeah, and I mean, Brad, one of the things is, like, you think about the past, make it 5 years, right? Just so we're picking a simple number, the past 5 years. If I said, like, Brad, what are and we're going to, like, not talk about people or things, but, like, what are the worst 5 injuries we had in the last 5 years, right? And don't make it working. Just make it like, guys in our team, on our family, on the Berg team, worst 5 injuries. Like, what comes to mind? I mean, for me, it's simple. Like, like, we've had 2 horrific. One horrific motorcycle issue. Oh, and then now recently we just had another one that's not as bad, but minor, Like, it's not work, but it's the reason I bring it up is complacency. It's like, they're in places that they're comfortable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in that one specific scenario, there's probably no place that employee is more comfortable than sitting on that dirt bike. And it didn't work. Like, he did something that he'd probably done 1,000,000 times.
Carson was very comfortable up in that tree.
That's what I'm saying. When you think of accidents that with your family, I mean, same thing. Like, Mara broke her arm falling off of I've seen her take 100 falls worse than that, and she fell when she was little out of a playset that was not that tall, and just she didn't pop up. You know what I mean? In other words, that's why complacency is such an issue, because a tree is not that dangerous. In that scenario, I mean, like, cutting a tree, if we're talking about, like, felling trees or logging, that's different. But I'm talking about, like, climbing a tree, not that dangerous. I mean, like, clearly you're in the air, it's a little bit of danger, right? But one time you do something wrong and it becomes real dangerous, and that's the world we live in every single day. You know what I mean? And in my head, the picture is always a track hoe and a pipe layer. I know there's a lot of other ways that we could have risk.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're talking trench safety, I mean, it's hard to get more risk than standing inside of earth that's either properly retained or with mechanically retained, or you believe that it is stability-wise it will hold. And then you put a pipe in there, and then you put a track hoe that weighs 100,000 pounds carrying material and putting it into that trench. That's a lot of risk. And we do it like there's no risk at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, in this particular safety day, I don't know that I'll do it. I talked to Tracy about it. I'm thinking about having Mara just sit in for that morning. Just because, I mean, Mara's like 14, but I wanted her to realize, because so many times she asks me like what we do and she tries to understand it, but to really see what it is that these guys do and women, what our team does every single day, to have a little bit of an understanding of it. Because so many people, they just drive around everything that all of the heavy civil companies do with no real cognizance of it. They just don't know. They're just a guy running a piece of equipment. I don't know that most of you could get in it and start it.
Sure. Yeah.
If you could start it.
Well, a lot of people think it's like driving a car, right?
Right.
I mean, not realizing the complexity.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even something simple like a rock truck or a roller.
Sure.
But does your car pivot in the middle?
Right.
Does it twist both horizontally and vertically? Can it move every way? How much could you dump? How steep could it be? How much can the bed be turned? These are all things that you don't know. And we make that mistake, right? Talk about a Berg issue that we had to deal with over the years was inexperienced guy comes on the site, especially one of our big sites, and we're like, okay, well, we can't run dozer, can't run track hoe, but he has some equipment experience. Let's put him in the rock truck, right? Let's put him in the biggest, heaviest, most moving piece of equipment we have, and look, just for fun, let's put them on slopes. You know what I mean? It was a bad plan, and we had to come to terms with it and realize, yes, they did drive themselves to work, and in essence, they're just driving but it's a completely different vehicle.
Right.
Or you put them on a roller. Not that dangerous, except you could turn somebody into a piece of paper. Or what if it rolls and, on a hill, or any number of things the way we use it. It's not the same. So I think that's important, and that's what sort of stuck in my head with the Mara thing was to let her see this is the reality of the work that our team goes to every day. This is what these guys know. What I mean?
And it's probably easy at times. I don't know if you agree or not, but it's probably easy at times to confuse complacency with not evaluating the risk involved in something because you're comfortable with it. Like, I don't know that like the things that we see are always complacency, and maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. I'm just like, thinking off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, the experience, right, has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Anytime you do something 100, 1,000, 10,000 times, right, it's going to look different if it's my 5th time doing it, but Dan's done it 5,000 times, even though it may look much less complicated or much less formal when he's doing it. He's probably going through a lot more stuff in his head that you don't realize.
Right.
There's some of that stuff that comes with experience, which is an important thing too. We have a lot of guys that have a whole lot of experience out there in the field, and we have a lot of guys that don't have a lot of experience. So,
Sure.
It's important that the guys understand the difference between the two. And, a lot of what we do with this training is to, the new guys that come on that don't have a lot of experience, like, sure, it's for them. But I would always tell the guys, like, it's just as much for the other guys that are in the field, right? It's our commitment to them that, like, hey, we have this checklist of stuff, whether it's vehicle, OSHA related, et cetera, that we're trying to do our best to put guys in the field with you that have a level of safety, yes, for them getting started in the industry, but also for you guys, that we're not just throwing guys out there in the field and saying, hey,
Right.
Figure it out.
And I think you're exactly right, because what I'm thinking is, we've always been a company that has said, like, we're going to give people the opportunity to grow.
Sure.
Right? So we hire young people all the time. We hire relatively inexperienced people all the time. Maybe they've had some level of education, but not a lot of in-machine, on-site, actual application. And we say, that's okay. Like, we're going to hire you as a laborer, but as opportunity presents itself, we're going to put you into a machine. We're going to let you grow. We're going to let you see what success is supposed to look like. And I think that it's tough for those people to not try to keep pace with the experience and the speed at times of the people around them because of that risk evaluation. They see it happening. It seldom is there an issue. And so they're saying, like, yeah, I want that. I want to do that. I'm going to get in the machine and I'm going to go as fast as that guy. Or, like, give me a few minutes and I'll be comfortable. It's like the risk evaluation process, and trying to continually coach that. And especially for our competent people on site, our foremen and our superintendents, to be able to, like, recognize that and say, that person's going to need a little more distance and a little more runway. We've got to give them some space to let them be successful and protect themselves and those around them. So,
well, and coming off of that additionally and sort of piggybacking on what both of you said, is you have a perception, right? And it is always Cooper that I think of.
Sure.
That Cooper used to run the tracks off the 61. I mean, and if you looked at his utilization, he's at near full throttle. And Greg would clean up his mess. You know what I mean? Like, because Cooper perceived Greg to be going fast.
Sure.
But if you actually looked at it, Greg wasn't going fast. Greg was just so efficient that nothing was wasted. Like, because I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but what you see in our work, especially grading work, is you see the effect, you see the finish. And in seeing that finish, you then, like, back into a speed. Almost like if I said, like, Brian, we're going to drive 10 miles and it's going to take me 5 minutes to get there. So, okay, so you went 2 miles an hour. And I'd be like, no, actually, I drove 100 miles an hour, but I made 7 stops. Right? Like, in other words, like, that sounds crazy, but what I'm suggesting is that in an inexperienced person having to constantly maneuver and adjust and rework stuff to get to the point that, say, a Greg, or Paul in a track hoe, or, one of those guys, that they can do, they're actually working slower than you, but they're so effective, so efficient that they move at an effective pace. But then we have younger people who move at an ineffective pace because they're trying to keep pace, not realizing that the skill is actually what you needed. Like, anybody can put the dozer full throttle and just push dirt around, but did you accomplish something? Like,
Sure.
Are you done? And that's a really hard lesson that is not really safety related per se, but then all of a sudden it creates a safety issue because you're trying to operate at a speed faster than you should, and even something so small as when we've all done it, you play around on a skid loader And if you go full bore on a skid loader, all of a sudden it's like just jerky. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it moves around more. It's not what it's meant to do. Like you're not supposed to run with your car in the red. You could do it, you know, and certainly like if you're drag racing, you know what I mean? You could do it. But the movement is supposed to be smooth if it's going to be efficient. You know, and it goes back to the military thing about slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? Like that's the thing that's what our best operators are. And they are actually safe many times because of that. Like, because they're not moving quickly. They have a plan. They understand what they're doing, you know, and that's where complacency can get you, is because then it becomes like rote, like you know it. But the bigger risk in my mind is always when you have someone who's trying to keep up with the person with all that skill, because they want to like prove that they can do it, you know, and then you put yourself just in a spot you shouldn't, you know, and most of my memories of that are truck related. You know what I mean? It's somebody that just, they saw what the person did and they tried to replicate it at a speed that they couldn't.
Speed and same pace. And,
yeah, not realizing how much seat time that person actually had.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Or not appreciating it. They realize they don't appreciate the delta.
Yeah.
So, you know, but at the end of the day, it's something that sounds kind of corny, right? Like it's safety day. But in other words, but it is probably one of the most important things we do is to take a breath and talk about it and just realize that we all want to sit in this meeting again next year. Everyone who's here, I'd like you to be here next year, sitting here. And the best way to ensure that happens is to have this meeting and then every week follow that up with a toolbox talk or a JSA or whatever it is that you need for that job, so that we're doing things to prevent something happening, you know, and then just let everybody go to work and we end up in the same meeting having sandwiches together next year.
Yeah. That's probably a fair place to wrap it up. So looking forward to it. Safety Day this week. And folks, we hope you got something from this, and we hope you'll come back for another episode.